Good morning students. Today is lecture 22 under module 8. In today's lecture, we will discuss two most important applications or you can say types of ultrafiltration and of course applications. So, the first one is called micellar enhanced ultrafiltration and the second one is affinity based ultrafiltration. And then subsequently in today's lecture also we will discuss about bioseparations, because you know bioseparations is one of the field in which the application of membrane technology has been successfully commercialized, and one of the foremost important of you can say membrane technology application. Long back it started with protein separation. So, we will try to understand what is the basics, little basics of bioseparation, then we will see how ultrafiltration is helping in bioseparation applications. So, let us understand what is actually micellar enhanced ultrafiltration. So, before we discuss that, we should understand what is micelles. So, what are micelles? So, micelles are actually they are aggregates of the surfactant molecules which are dispersed in a liquid colloid. Okay. So, basically a surfactant molecule will be looking something like this. Okay. There is a head and there is a tail. Okay. So, this is a typical surfactant molecule, right. So, when these surfactants they are dispersed in aqueous media and beyond certain concentration they will form micelles, and that concentration beyond which the surfactants forms micelles are called CMC, critical micellar concentration. And how do you determine CMC? So, we can do it by measuring conductivity, we can measure osmotic pressure, we can measure surface tension, or we can measure turbidity. You can see this particular figure here which is plotted between surface tension and surfactant concentration, and you see these are the monomers which I was just showing. So, this is the CMC concentration here. Okay. Beyond this the micelles are getting formed. So, this is schematic representation of monomer micelle, how the micelles are getting formed. Say this is the hydrophilic group or the head, and this is the tail of the surfactant which is hydrophobic, this one, and this is how they form in aqueous media. Okay. This is another representation where the hydrophilic heads are exposed outside. So, these are outside and their tails are getting joined, and this is your aqueous solution. So, there are different types of micelles. So, we will not go into details about micelles and different properties, because that itself will take so much of time and is of not much of interest to us. We will just try to understand what is micelles, how they look like, how they function, so and how it is helping in our ultrafiltration. So, just quickly we will go through different types of micelles. There are three different types of micelles. One is the spherical or normal micelle, usually 3 to 6 nanometer. So, they are formed in water or aqueous solutions. So, brine or salt water dissolved in oil is one typical example. Then there are reverse micelles. So, you have seen na, here in the normal micelles the tails are joining together and the head is exposed outside. Okay, the head is outer side here. Okay, but here it is reverse micelles, the head is inside and tails are outside. So, usually 3 to 6 nanometer formed in non-polar solvent, oil dissolved in brine is an example. Then there are bilayered lamella. So, usually 3 to 60 nanometer in diameter, oil and brine both dissolved in middle phase will give us something like this. So, you can have a structure something like this. So, let us understand different types of surfactants. Basically, we have cationic surfactant, anionic and non-ionic. So, in cationic we have so many different types. CPC is one of the most widely used surfactant which is used in acetyl pyridinium chloride. Okay. It is used in mouthwash, toothpaste and some other applications. Then in anionic we have SDS, one of the most important surfactants, sodium dodecyl sulfate. So, this is used in most of the detergents powders, and it has other applications also. Then we have different non-ionic surfactants. So, we will see how the structure of SDS looks like. So, this is your SDS structure, it can be represented as a tail and a head. So, when CMC in the critical micellar concentration of SDS in pure water at 25 degree centigrade is 8.2 millimolar. So, beyond this 8.2 millimolar they will form micelles, and the aggregation number is about 62. You can see how the SDS will form micelles. Okay. The heads are outer side and the tails are joined here. So, this is your hydrophobic interior and this is the hydrophilic exterior. Similarly, this is CPC, cetyl pyridinium chloride micelles. This is the structure and this is how they are forming micelles. So, you can see their heads are outside and tails are inside. So, CPC CMC is about 0.322 kilo per meter cube, and CMC is in aqueous medium, and 0.01 mole sodium chloride solution if we are using a brine solution of 0.01 sodium chloride solution, then the CMC is 0.3 kg per meter cube, and aggregation number is almost 136 micelle in 0.01 m sodium chloride. Now, let us discuss the micellar enhanced ultrafiltration, how these micelles are helping in ultrafiltration operation to remove certain compounds. Now, MEUF, as popularly known, is a separation technique which can be used to remove metal ions or dissolved organics from water and wastewater. So, metal ions bind to the surface of negatively charged micelles of an anionic surfactant, while organic solutes tend to dissolve or solubilize within the micelles. So, ions will try to bind to the head actually of the anionic surfactant, while most of the organic solutes will try to dissolve in the core of the micelles or solubilized inside the cores of the micelles. The mixture is then forced through an ultrafiltration membrane with pore size small enough to block passage of the micelles and associated metal ions and or dissolved organics. Now, what is happening when the metal ion binding to the heads of the micelles or the organic compounds which are dissolving themselves or solubilizing themselves inside the core of the micelle will be retained by the ultrafiltration membrane. Why this is micellar enhanced ultrafiltration? Because in normal ultrafiltration, if you are not able to separate these heavy metals or organic compounds, due to their sizes and the size of the and there are other factors also. Using micelles, what is happening is that the size is so big that it will be retained on the ultrafiltration membrane. Of course, you have to choose a particular membrane cutoff again. So, that membrane will definitely retain all these micelles, and the micelles are retaining the heavy metal bound to its surface or organics dissolved in it. So, the surfactant molecules are used which form micelles above a certain concentration that we have discussed, of course, that is known as CMC. So, micelles can be 20 to 200 molecules in size. If solute micelles interaction takes place, it is possible to separate the micelles with ultrafiltration membranes and with them the complex to low molecular weight solutes. So, now you can understand that the solutes which are very small size and it is difficult to even separate using ultrafiltration membrane also. So, by using micelles, the micelles will retain them on their surface and will be rejected by the membranes. So, surfactants can also form complexes with organic molecules and metal ions under certain conditions. And this is how the schematic actually, how the ultrafiltration is happening using the micelles. So, surfactant is added to the aqueous feed and its concentration is adjusted in such a way that micelles are formed. That means, you have to add it beyond its CMC. So, there should be only small amount of free monomeric surfactant and solutes as less as possible. Then monomeric or unassociated surfactant passes through the membrane and does not contribute to the separation. So, here the water solution, these are the solutes which we want to separate, these black things. Then I add micelle surfactant here beyond CMC. So, now they form the micelles. Micelle formation and the solute binding to the micelles. Then we are going for ultrafiltration. So, you see that this is here rejected or retented with Lorentz micelles. Now, you can see the micelles are taking the solute inside its core. This is a schematic representation. It can be outside also, inside also, depending upon what type of micelle it is, what is the surfactant you are using and what is the solute. And then whatever you are getting in the permeated is little free surfactant and some solute, of course, which are not bound to the micelles will come out. So, this is how micellar enhanced ultrafiltration happens. So, the permeate should contain very little of the feed components of surfactants, while the retentant contains the surfactant and solutes. So, some of the important governing factors in MEUF are solubilization capacity of the solute, type and concentration of surfactant, pore size of the membrane, phase changes that may occur. Usually, in most of the cases phase changes is not happening, but in certain specific application it happens. So, the hydrophilicity of the membrane used is very important. The membranes that are opposite in charge to the surfactant and are hydrophobic may give poor flux. So, this is what we do not want. Non-ionic surfactants such as polyethoxyalkylated alkyl phenols, all alcohols have low CMC values and have large micelle sizes, thus allowing large pore ultrafiltration membranes to be used. So, anionic surfactants like sodium dodecyl sulfonate form small micelles and thus require ultrafiltration membrane as tight as 1000 Dalton molecular weight cutoff actually. So, on the other hand, cationic surfactants like hexadecyl pyridinium chloride have low CMC values. So, they form large micelles at room temperature and have a relatively large solubilization capacity. Now, in MEUF process, the rejection of surfactant increases sharply above the cloud point, and the temperature at which the appearance of the surfactant changes from transparent to cloudy of the surfactant. So, flux and rate of permeation of surfactants increase with the rise in temperature, presumably because the reduction in viscosity. So, when as you know, when you increase the temperature, the viscosity decreases. So, that is how the rate of permeation of surfactants are increasing in case you are using high temperature. Above the cloud point, both flux and permeate concentration decrease, probably because of phase inversion and subsequent pore blockage. So, the performance of MEUF depends upon material selection of ultrafiltration membranes and other characteristics, properties of surfactant, operating parameters and dissolved ions. So, you can see, so these are the parameters that are affecting the MEUF performance. First is what? Surfactant. So, the surfactant type, the CMC value, structure and size, whether it is a single surfactant or a mixed surfactant, then membrane. So, in membrane, what is the membrane type? Material, polymeric, ceramic, or what it is? Its molecular weight cutoff, its pore size. Then operating parameters. So, the transmembrane pressure, concentration, pH and temperature. Then we have ions, dissolved ions. So, what types of ions, what type of salt are present, whether they are inorganic or organic, whether they are single or mixed system. So, all these things affect the MEUF performance. So, the selection of surfactant. So, this is one of the most important parameter. So, binding of solute is a function of molecular structure or ionic character of solute, type of surfactant and concentration of surfactant. So, this is one typical ionic surfactant example. So, you can see that when I increase M, this M, the CMC decreases. Even I increase N also, CMC decreases. So, increase in surfactant concentration, permeate increases, and addition of inorganic salt, CMC decreases. So, another non-ionic surfactant we will see. So, this is counter ion with respect to solute if it is ideal surfactant and has a very low CMC. So, when you increase the M, your CMC decreases, rejection increases, and if you are increasing N for N greater than almost 15 to 20. Okay. So, and the increase in surfactant concentration, permeate decreases. So, applications of MEUF, mostly there are many applications, but mostly restricted to remove low molecular weight solutes, heavy metals and some organic components. So, a removal of traces of petroleum oil from oil filled brine can be accomplished by MEUF. This is also one typical application where the concentration is very small. So, MEUF actually plays a good role. So, high oil rejections could be achieved with an extremely low surfactant feed concentration, just 0.34 milligrams per liter, making the MEUF process economically and environmentally viable. Then removal of heavy metals from wastewater using macromolecules like sodium polystyrene sulfonate, polyacrylic acid etc. as metal binders. So, these molecules will bind to the metals and then they will form micelles and they will get rejected. So, some of the metals includes copper, zinc, cadmium, mercury etc. Arsenic can also be removed by MEUF using cetyl pyridinium chloride CPC using a ceramic membrane system. It is well established. So, the next application of ultrafiltration or a type of ultrafiltration we can say is affinity ultrafiltration. Now, the advent of affinity ultrafiltration has opened a new avenue in the field of bioseparations, because it was initially designed or used for the separation of proteins. So, affinity ultrafiltration is a combination of cross flow membrane filtration with affinity chromatography. Okay. So, in practice it involves carrying out affinity chromatography and ultrafiltration within the same ultrafiltration module or in separate units in sequence. So, either you will have a same module UF module in which your affinity chromatography as well as ultrafiltration both are taking place, or you can have a separate ultrafiltration module and a separate affinity chromatography module. So, it depends upon actually depends on what type of application you are going to use it in what type of applications and what is the intended solute of rejection. So, if the desired component in the product mixture is present with other undesirable impurities, all of which would normally pass through a membrane, Then a high molecular weight binding agent known as microligand can be added that will selectively bind to the compound of interest. Suppose my compound of interest, let us say a particular protein is present with several other solutes. Some are higher molecular weight, some are low molecular weight than that particular protein. So, in this case what is necessary is that, so you can have some sort of ligands or microligands. What are their role? So, you choose the ligand in such a way that these ligands will bind to your protein of interest selectively, thereby not binding to other solutes which are present, then it can be separated. So, these ligands are called affinity ligands. So, binds with one of the target biomolecules in conjunction with a cross linking agent, thus making larger conjugate molecule. So, when the binding takes place, the overall size of this binded molecules becomes bigger. So, they can be easily retained by the ultrafiltration membrane. The product mixture and the microligand are first introduced into a mixing chamber. The product microligand complex will be rejected by the membrane while other can pass through. Let us see the schematic actually how it happens. So, the product mixture, that means in which your product is there, that you will mix with the microligand in a mixer, then that goes to the membrane, the membrane 1 and membrane 2. So, in which you are retaining your this one what is this is called product of interest, because that is getting bound to the microligand. So, your microligand and the product mixture will be retained on the surface of the membrane. Now, that goes to a mixture here. So, here I am adding an eluent. What this eluent will do? So, this eluent will separate the ligand from the product, they are separated, right. Now, let us say so something like this. So, it is here it is coming. So, it is separated into different sizes, right, it is done. So, let us say now it comes to the membrane here. Now, this membrane will separate your ligands which will be retained here, and this is your product of interest that will come here, your ligands will be separated. Then now ligands can be again recycled back. So, this is conceptually similar to your micellar enhanced ultrafiltration. The only thing is that in here the ligand will be bound to the your product of interest, and in a subsequent arrangement you are adding a buffer or a eluent which will release this products from the ligands, and then they are getting separated by another membrane system. In affinity ultrafiltration, the protein to be purified is complexed with a macroligand composed of a soluble polymer or an insoluble microparticle which covalently bound target protein specific affinity ligands. So, we can have ligands which are very specific for a particular product or protein, and it will be bound only to that proteins. So, that is the beauty of this type of application actually. So, the complex is trapped by an ultrafiltration membrane, whereas unwanted proteins pass through the membrane. The unwanted proteins are removed from the system by a carrier liquid. The system is then supplemented with an agent eluting the target protein by dissociating it from the microligand complex. The purified protein then passes through the membrane while the microligand is trapped by it. Now, this microligand can be reused after some regeneration. So, affinity ultrafiltration has a number of advantages over other protein purification techniques. So, the applications are water treatment, treatment of oily wastewater, pulp and paper industry, textile industry, and clarification of fruit juices. Now, let us discuss bioprocessing. So, you know, in my introduction class I told you that membrane technology has a lot of application in bioprocessing industries, biotechnology industry, pharmaceutical industries, where we are dealing with various types of biological macromolecules. So, that is why it is very important to understand what are bioprocessing, what are the different types of bioprocessing, and what is bioseparations, what are the different types of bioseparation technologies available, and how ultrafiltration is going to help us. So, let us understand. So, bioprocessing is the manufacture of biological products such as biochemicals, pharmaceuticals, foods, food additives, nutraceuticals and agrochemicals. And what is bioseparations engineering? A systematic study of scientific and engineering principles utilized for the recovery, isolation, purification and polishing of biological products. Now, please do not confuse bioseparation with separation of some waste things using a biological method. So, those are biological wastewater treatment. So, bioabsorption and all these things, okay, those are different, do not confuse with that. So, there are two types of bioprocessing, one is reactive bioprocessing, as for example, a manufacture of penicillin, and we have extractive bioprocessing, as for example, plasma proteins. So, in reactive bioprocessing, the scheme is something like this. So, there is a upstream processing, then you go for a biological reaction. Okay, some reaction is happening, right, during which the product is getting formed. Then you undergo bioseparation and you get your product. So, that reaction is not present in the extractive bioprocessing. So, it is upstream processing, bioseparation, you get your biological product. So, the difference between these two is basically the biological reaction that is happening in the reactive bioprocessing. So, there are different types of biological products, okay. According to the chemical classification, they can be solvents, there may be cells also like yeast, there are crude cellular products like yeast extract, soy extract, organic acids like citric, lactic acid, there can be vitamins like ascorbic acid, B12, amino acids, gums and polymers, antibiotics like penicillin, proteins like milk proteins, egg proteins, several plasma proteins, sugars and carbohydrates, as for example, glucose, fructose, there can be lipids also, glycerol, nucleic acids. Okay. So, applications are industrial chemicals, agrochemicals, pharmaceuticals, then food and food additives, nutraceuticals, then we have diagnostic products such as glucose oxidase and peroxidase, then we have commodity chemicals, laboratory reagents and cosmetic products. So, let us try and understand why I have given this. You will understand that what is the importance of bioseparation based on the cost of bioseparation. Okay. You can see that the cost of bioseparation is huge for almost all the products. If for the solvents it is 15 to 20%, for plasma proteins or human albumin it is 70 to 80%. Okay. For antibiotics it is almost 20 to 60%. So, the downstream processing cost is extremely high for most of the biological products. Now, that is why there are lot of scopes still available to do some research and to find out solutions or technologies which can reduce this cost of the bioseparation. So, once this cost of bioseparation actually decreases to a significant level, your cost of the final product will decrease. So, what we can do with bioseparation? So, largely based on chemical separation techniques, chemical separation techniques are modified based on specific requirements. Novel separations may be necessary in some cases, high throughput and productivity, high selectivity, need to satisfy stringent quality requirements and need to take into account degradable material, low temperature operations and multi-technique separation. So, these are all the nature of bioseparation processes. So, the basis of separation is basically there are many, okay. Some of these we have already covered in our usual membrane separation. So, the first one is size, of course, the second one is density, then diffusivity, then shape, polarity, solubility, electrostatic charge, mobility, steric hindrance and volatility. So, all these parameters, okay, or based on this we can do separation. Like let us say we are talking about size, so we can go for a general filtration or even membrane separation. So, centrifugation is a density based separation. So, based on shape we can go for filtration, centrifugation, solubility plays a big role in crystallization. So, steric hindrance in again filtration, so volatility in distillation. So, these are the physical forms that can be separated during bioseparation: particle liquid separation, particle separation in liquid medium, particle solute separation in liquid medium, solute solvent separation, solute separation in liquid medium and liquid separation. So, bioseparation techniques are two types, one is low resolution high throughput, another is high resolution low throughput. So, low resolution high throughput is these are the techniques: cell disruption, precipitation, centrifugation, liquid extraction, leaching, filtration, supercritical extraction, microfiltration, ultrafiltration and adsorption. And the high resolution low throughput is chromatography, which is most widely used. Then we have affinity separation, electrophoresis and ultracentrifugation. So, what is the REAP scheme? It is very famous in bioprocessing industries. So, REAP stands for recovery, isolation, purification and polishing. So, it is a multi-technique separation processes. So, process design should take into consideration the following: the nature of the starting material, the initial location of the target product, the volume of process stream, the relative abundance of the product in the starting material, the susceptibility to degradation of the product, the desired physical form of the final product, the quality requirements and costing. So, these are the things that should be taken into consideration when you design a RIP scheme. Let us understand how a monoclonal antibody, which is a protein, can be separated using a bioseparation technique using of course membrane technology. So, monoclonal antibodies are usually present in the cell culture supernatant. So, they are this one is almost 6 to 9% okay, initial purity in the cell culture supernatant. So, initially what you will do? You will pass through the microfiltration so as to remove most of the other solutes which are of not interest. Then it goes to a precipitation using a ammonium sulphate, and that precipitate again you add some buffer and then you go for ultrafiltration. Okay. Now, in ultrafiltration you remove your what you are doing here, you are basically enriching. Okay. Enriching means what? Enriching means this 6 to 9% to certain percent, let us say 15%, 20%, something like this. Now, then it goes to the ion exchange. Okay. Right. So, this will finally will do, because you know ion exchange is extremely selective. So, it will actually give us very high purity. So, we will get almost 90 more than 90% pure of monoclonal antibody. Then a final ultrafiltration, then we go for a gel filtration, you get final almost 99% pure monoclonal antibodies. So, let us understand the current paradigm in the bioseparation. So, the replacement of the conventional RIPP scheme or RIP scheme by using new techniques which can significantly cut down the number of steps or stages to achieve the bioseparation. So, some of the new systems are membrane chromatography, expanded bed chromatography and high resolution ultrafiltration. So, you can see the membrane plays a big role in this. So, the membrane based separation we are discussing. Okay. So, either you have a membrane this one pressure driven separation, or you can have a concentration gradient driven separation, right. So, membrane properties, so mechanical strength like tensile strength, bursting pressure, chemical resistance like your pH range and all, then permeability to different species as per example pure water solutes and average porosity and pore size distribution. So, as you know fouling is a major problem in membrane system, any membrane. Okay. So, deposition or adsorption of material on the surface, it is highly undesirable. Permeate flow declines during due to fouling. There are two mechanisms, interior fouling and exterior fouling. pH and salt concentration also affect fouling. Fouling may be reversed to an extent by membrane cleaning, as we have discussed this back flushing and other processes. Often fouling is irreversible. So, you can see this how the pore blockage is taking place here. Okay. This is, and here interior fouling due to the different types of the structure of the pore. Now, downstream processing. Downstream processing refers to the recovery and purification of the biosynthetic products, particularly pharmaceuticals from natural sources such as animal and plant tissue or fermentation broth, including the recycling of salvageable components and proper treatment and disposal of waste. Now, it is an essential step in the manufacture of pharmaceuticals such as antibiotics, hormones, antibodies and vaccines, okay, and natural fragrance and flavorant compounds. So, removal of insolubles is the first step in the downstream processing and involves the capture of the product as a solute in the particular free liquid. For example, the separation of cells, cell debris and other particular matter from the fermentation broth containing an antibiotics. Okay. Now, typical operation to achieve this are filtration, centrifugation, sedimentation, flocculation, electroprecipitation and gravity settling. Additional operations such as grinding, homogenization, leaching are required to recover products from solid sources such as plant and animal tissues, which are usually included in this group. Then the second is what? After the removal of insolubles is the product isolation. So, this is the removal of those components whose properties vary markedly from that of the desired product. But for most products, water is the chief impurity, okay, and isolation steps are designed to remove most of the water, reducing the volume of the material to be handled and concentrating the product. So, solvent extraction, adsorption, ultrafiltration and precipitation are some of the operations. So, the next is product purification. Okay. So, this is done to separate those contaminants that resemble the product very closely in physical and chemical properties. Consequently, steps in this stage are expensive to carry out and require sensitive and sophisticated equipment. Now, this stage contributes a significant fraction of the entire downstream processing expenditure. So, the purification one is the most contributing inside that downstream processing cost. So, examples are include is affinity base separation, size exclusion, reverse phase chromatography, crystallization and fractional precipitation. And then last step is the product polishing. So, this describes the final processing steps which end with packaging of the product in a form that is stable, easily transportable and convenient. Crystallization, desiccation, lyophilization and spray drying are the unit operations which actually achieve this. So, depending on the product and its intended use, polishing may also include operations to sterilize the product and remove or deactivate trace contaminants which might compromise product safety. Such operations might include the removal of viruses or depyrogenation. Now, let us understand what are proteins, because see some of you might end up in doing your job in some biotechnology or pharmaceutical industries or bioprocessing industries, and you will be dealing with proteins every day in your life. So, it is very important to understand what are proteins. We will just discuss little basics. So, proteins are the most abundant organic material in the cell. Typically 30 to 70% of cells dry weight is protein. So, all proteins contain carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen and oxygen. In addition, sulfur contributes to the 3-dimensional stabilization of almost all proteins by the formation of the disulfide bonds, SS bond, okay, between sulfur atoms at different locations along the polymeric chain. The two major types of protein conformations are fibrous types of proteins and globular types of proteins. Proteins have diverse biological functions which can be classified in 5 major categories. Structural proteins, which are glycoproteins, collagen, keratin. We have catalytic proteins, which are enzymes. Okay. Transport proteins, hemoglobin, serum albumins. We have regulatory proteins like hormones. Then we have protective proteins such as antibodies and thrombin. So, let us see the structure, how it looks like. So, proteins, this is a alpha helical coil. So, these are fibrous proteins. Okay. So, globular proteins looks like this. This is a tertiary structure of a single chain globular protein. Okay, they bind together along its own chain actually, and forms a structure something like this. This is called globular proteins. Okay. Now, simple proteins are polymers formed by condensation of amino acids. In protein formation, the condensation reaction occurs between the amino group of one acid and carboxylic group of other, forming a peptide bond. So, polypeptides are short condensation chains of amino acids. By convention, the term polypeptides are reversed for those relatively short chains. Many hormones such as insulin and growth hormones are polypeptides. So, many proteins contain other organic and even inorganic components other than amino acids. So, the other part of these conjugated proteins is called a prosthetic group, okay, and these proteins contain a prosthetic groups are known as conjugated proteins. The proteins which contains a prosthetic, all proteins do not contain prosthetic groups. So, those contain a prosthetic groups are called conjugated proteins. So, hemoglobin is a conjugated protein and has 4 heme groups, okay, which are iron containing organometallic complexes. You know, hemoglobin is responsible for the transfer of oxygen in the cells. So, proteins play a crucial role in virtually all biological processes. The significance and remarkable scope of their functions are the proteins play important role in enzyme catalysis, okay, transport and storage, and then coordinated motion, mechanical support, immune protection, generation and transmission of nerve impulses, control of growth and differentiation. So, you can later on just read these slides, there are little description for your understanding. Okay. I am just skipping them and let us move ahead. So, then what are antibodies? So, antibodies or immunoglobulins are proteins that bind to a particular molecule or a portion of large molecules with a high degree of specificity. Now, antibody usually written as AB, okay, like this. Okay. So, molecules are the molecules appear in blood serum and in certain cells of a vertebrate in response to a foreign macromolecules. Okay. So, when some virus is attacking us, some antigen, okay. So, as a consequence of that, right, the cell will secrete or generate antibodies. Now, this antibody will bind to the antigen by forming a group, okay, antibody antigen complex, and then it will somehow go away from the cell. So, there are different mechanisms that are anyway we will not discuss in those things. So, as I told, the foreign macromolecule is called the antigen. Okay. So, antigen antibody when they form, so that is called antigen antibody complex. So, the complex formation is between antigen antibody is called the immune response, okay, immune response of the cell. Now, in addition to their obvious clinical importance, antibodies are important in industrial products for use in diagnostic kits as well as protein separation schemes. So, antibodies may also become a key element in the delivery of some anti-cancer drugs. Antibodies have emerged as one of the most important products of biotechnology. So, antibody molecules having binding sites that are specific for and complementary to the structural features. That is why affinity chromatography can play a big role in antibody separation. Antibody molecules usually have two binding sites and can form a three-dimensional lattice of alternating antigen antibody molecules. So, this complex precipitates from the serum and is called precipitin. Antibodies are highly specific to the foreign proteins that induce their formation. The 5 major class of immunoglobulins in human blood plasma are IgG, IgA, IgD, IgM and IgE, of which IgG globulins are the most abundant and the best understood. It is called immunoglobulin G. So, molecular weight of immunoglobulins are about 150 kilodaltons except for IgM, which is little high, 900 kilodalton. So, a dalton is a unit of mass equivalent to a hydrogen atom. This we know, we have discussed earlier also. See, this is how antibodies looks like. You can see it is a Y-shaped structure, it is just a Y-shaped structure, okay, something like this. You can see so much of disulfide bonds here, these are the disulfide bonds. Then these black areas are the variable regions, and whatever the white area, okay, that is actually constant region. So, immunoglobulins have 4 polypeptide chains, 2 heavy chains and 2 light chains. So, they contain about 430 amino acids and 214 amino acids respectively. So, these chains are linked together by a disulfide bond in a Y-shaped flexible structure. Now, the heavy chain contains a covalently bond oligosaccharide component, okay, and each chain has a region of constant amino acid sequence and a variable. So, this is how it helps, and so this is, see, the antigen is coming here and it will bound to this heavy chain and light chain, this particular region here. So, there are 2 regions in which antibodies can be, antigens can be bound. Okay. Now, the AB molecule has 2 binding sites for antigen and the variable portions of the LNH chains. So, the variable sections of the hypervariable regions in which the frequency of amino acid replacement is high. So, once they bound, then it can be separated. Now, let us understand how we will purify the monoclonal antibodies. So, they are traditionally purified by affinity separation by using a protein AG based chromatographic media. So, problem with this media is the ligand leaking. So, this is the ligand, which is, it is a column chromatography, the ligand starts leaking, it is a big problem that will come into the product. Then when you are using acidic buffer to elute the bound MAB, okay, that is another product, because the acid may also contain or contaminate the final monoclonal antibody. Throughput is very less, difficulty in scale up and very expensive process. So, there are need for other separation methods. So, we have chromatography is difficult in scale up, ion exchange is poor selectivity, size exclusion is very time consuming. So, whereas membrane technology ultrafiltration is providing is one of the best solution. So, it is possible to achieve high throughput with E scale up and can be operated with continuous mode. So, let us see how it is happening. So, try to see quickly the latest developments in bioseparation using membranes. So, there is a new hybrid bioseparation which is proposed by Wang et al. So, it is a rapid, inexpensive and scalable, very important, okay, hybrid bioseparation technique for one step purification of humanized monoclonal antibody for mammalian cell culture supernatant. So, it involves the selective and reversible retention of the antibody with the membrane module, utilizing a combination of microfiltration of precipitated antibody and simultaneous hydrophobic interaction based membrane chromatography of soluble antibody on the same microfiltration membrane. So, the retained monoclonal antibody is subsequently recovered from the membrane module in a highly pure form by changing the solution condition to that which favor simultaneous antibody resolution and elution. So, this combination of principal separation in high capacity, high resolution. Let us see how it happens actually. So, this is how, this is actually microporous membrane. So, this is a MF membrane. Okay. So, here the monoclonal membrane is bound with the monoclonal antibodies, okay, right. And when you are passing the cell culture supernatant, so your precipitated monoclonal antibody is getting retained on the surface of the membrane and all other impurities are permeating through. So, a fraction of the MAB in a feed sample is precipitated using high ammonium sulphate concentration, and this is retained by sieving through a microfiltration membrane. So, what you are doing is you are using ammonium sulphate in high concentration ammonium sulphate. So, that will precipitate your monoclonal antibody, then you pass this precipitation through the membrane. So, the microfiltration membrane, since now they have become aggregates, it will be, you see there these are become aggregates, okay, something similar to your micellar enhanced. Okay. So, these aggregates due to their size, big size, will be retained on the surface of the membrane and other all impurities will be passed through. So, using this combination of mechanism, the antibody is selectively and quantitatively retained within the membrane module. Now, the retained membrane this MAB is subsequently released by reducing the ammonium sulphate concentration, which results in the simultaneous discharge. So, what you are doing? So, you are slowly reducing the concentration of the ammonium sulphate, so that the aggregate becomes deaggregate, they will dissolve, so that you will get free monoclonal antibodies and you can take it out. There is another technology which was proposed by R. Ghosh, Professor R. Ghosh. So, this is bioseparation using supported liquid membrane chromatography. We have not studied liquid membrane, but just let us try to understand. We will of course in detail study liquid membrane in our subsequent lectures. So, some of the major problems associated with packed bed chromatography can be solved using synthetic membranes as chromatographic media. So, ion exchange and affinity interactions have mainly been utilized for the separation of proteins using membrane chromatography. In this work, hydrophobic interaction membrane chromatography of proteins is carried out, right. So, a supported liquid membrane was prepared which could bind specific proteins in the presence of high salt concentration. So, in this particular study, they have separated Campath 1G monoclonal antibodies and BSA using supported liquid membrane technology, right. This is how it has happened. So, this is a microfiltration membrane through which PVDF membrane through which N-decanol is filled it. Okay. So, N-decanol is pre-filled inside the membrane pores. So, the membrane material being hydrophobic in nature, the pores within the membrane were all expected to be filled with the organic solvent. Now, buffer which is 20 millimolar sodium phosphate at pH 7.2 was then forced through this membrane at fixed flow rates, okay, and in increasing steps. So, that will help in retaining the Campath 1G. So, then there is another latest development which has come, which is called cascade bioseparation. So, you know what is the need for cascade system, because you know the current ultrafiltration configurations can be applied in situations where either purity or recovery can be sacrificed, right, in a single step system. So, in a single stage system the efficiency is usually limited, only cascade or multi-stage systems can possibly overcome this problem. So, theoretical studies by Professor Ghosh has already proved that. So, continuous purification of monoclonal antibody has been reported, high resolution purification of antibody, that is high purity combined with high recovery is already predicted. So, I will show you one of the work which actually I carried out in Professor Ghosh lab in McMaster University, Canada. So, what we have done, initially we have used it two-stage cascade systems, right. So, you can see this, there are two membranes. So, this is membrane 1 and membrane 2. Okay. So, your feed is being fed, okay, to the membrane 1, you can see here, right, and the retentate is being partly recycled and the partly it is being fed as to the membrane 2. Okay. And then here this is, and you get your this one product of interest. So, basically it is a two-stage system. So, the retentate from one stage is fed to the another stage, right. We have used this tangential flow filtration systems which were given by the Paul Life Sciences. You can see the initial value is actually 6.67 and the purity, you can see this is a single stage system, this is single stage system, okay, and with the two stage system we can see the purity has increased, okay. This is affinity chromatograms. So, let us see the result actually in quantification terms. So, we have varied the feed flow rate we have increased 0.05, 0.1, okay. Then the QSR, the sweep flow rate, okay, 1 to 1.5 varies. So, percentage of purity of MAB in the retented is 46, 40, 58.6. You can see that the initial it is 6.77. In a two stage system, only two stage system, it has increased from 6.77 to 58.65. Okay, this is in percentage. Okay, so you can understand that how does two stage is doing the concentration. Then the same system we have added another one. So, we have added one more membrane to the two stage system. Now, this has become third stage system. Okay. So, in the third stage system what we are getting, you can see this is the initial feed, okay, and we can see how the MAB purification has been increased, and this is how this is a SDS gel, okay, phase. You can see this is the concentrated monocular antibody, okay, it is completely separated. There is almost no impurity present here in this lane. Let us see the three stage system. Here the initial purity is 7.37. From 7.37 we have gone almost to 69.94. So, it is close to 70%. So, you can see that from 6 to 7% of the initial purity in a two stage we got almost 60%, in three stage we got almost 70%. Okay. So, the MAB purity and recovery obtained with the three stage system are higher than those obtained with the two stage system. Recovery is also very important, because recovery also very important, because these are very costly products, right, and the purification factor also 9.49, which is very good. So, today's lectures are mostly taken by various books. So, you can refer little of K. Nath and Becker as well as Mulder. So, in case you have any query, please feel free to write to me at kmohanty@iitg.ac.in. So, in the next class we will discuss about, we will start microfiltration. So, we will understand the basic principles and advantages of microfiltration system, cross flow and dead end microfiltration system, different types of membranes and modules which are utilized in microfiltration system. So, thank you very much.